You know, the first thing I like about the Ultra Waxer 2 is that it's not on fire. But what I'm really talking about is precise temperature control for exact wax handling properties. Because I've set the spatula temperatures at the ideal flow point, I have absolute control over the wax, and I can put it right where I want it and build my contour very precisely, eliminating a lot of carving of the wax. A word about waxes. Waxes have properties that control shrinkage, workability, that's kind of the flow of the wax when you build it, carvability, you know, when you carve it you don't want it mushy and gooey, and all these things are controlled by the temperature of the wax. And of course the temperature of the wax is controlled by the temperature of the heating spatula. If we get the spatula too hot, we're going to overexpand the wax. So it's going to shrink more than it should and contract. Control the temperature of the wax and thus control its flow and put it right where you need it. You won't have to do any carving. This is the real beauty of using the Ultra Waxer 2. Here's an example where I'm using the large number 7 scoop. Now, the large number 7, as you can see, has a radiused end, and the shape of the carver is identical to the ditch below the margin. So because I have absolute temperature control, I've set the tip temperature so that I can use this instrument to bulk reduce the dipping wax below the margin. Rather than carving it with a cold carver, I can just wipe the wax away. Clean my spatula tip and go to the next area. It rests right in the ditch, and as you can see, it takes the bulk away, and at the same time, because it's at a low temperature, it doesn't overmelt the coping, but it makes certain that the final edge of the margin is absolutely sealed against the surface of the die. See how I get right down to the margin? I can actually see the little red line of the margin. Now, after I complete all of my bulk waxing, I'll have very little to remove from the margin edge. Saves a lot of time, and I think gives you the guarantee of an absolute seal around the entire margin periphery. Here I have the beaver tail tip mounted in my spatula, and I use the beaver tail tip to seal between the quick sprue and the runner bar. This tip allows me with just one wipe to create a smooth radiused attachment of the quick sprue to the runner bar, guaranteeing smooth flow of the cast metal into the investment mold. I'm now ready to close the final connector. For this process, I want to use a very detailed, delicate tip at a low temperature. I do this so that I don't take a chance of distorting the wax pattern. Right now I have a beaver tail tip in my spatula, and I need to change the tip to the needle tip. So let me show you how I do that. To remove the tip, retract the locking collar and just pull the tip out. Select your new tip, and for this I want to use the needle tip. You can see that on the bottom of the tip there's a flat. And that flat sets into the spatula and rotates till it finds its position and sits down. But notice it's not fully engaged. Now we need to retract the locking ring and fully seat the tip and release the ring. Now I'm going to seal that last connector that makes this pattern a one-piece pattern. You notice that I always use the Ultra Waxer and the Wet Waxer in combination. This allows me to have the coolest wax temperatures but still be able to flow the wax. The coolest wax temperatures because the wax in the Wet Waxer is already liquefied, so I don't need high spatula temperatures to work it. So I'm just going to pick up a little drop of wax out of my wet waxer on the tip of my needle tip spatula and just seal over the connector, not melting the wax of either the coping or the pontic. And rotate the model around, and the same thing, a small droplet just over the top of the connector to seal the little cut made by the separating filament. My pattern is now ready to draw from the model, be placed into an investment mold, and be invested for my casting process. With two spatulas, I can have two different temperatures and two different working tips. So on my Ultra Waxer 2, for most of my waxing, I use the beaver tail burnisher set at a high temperature for bulk waxing, and the PKT1 set at a low temperature for detailed or controlled waxing. I want to take just a moment to review how we program the Ultra Waxer 2. When your unit is set up and you're ready to begin, we want to first turn the unit on. Press the Enter button and release. The display is flashing. It's telling me that it's set at the factory default of 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, this is too low for any of my waxing procedures, so I'm going to set one spatula, spatula number 1, to show you how to select a preset for working temperature. Using the menu button, I can toggle between spatula number 1 and spatula number 2. Just press and quickly release, and you'll see the indicating arrow move from spatula number 1 to 2, and back again to spatula number 1. We're going to set a preset temperature for spatula number 1. Press and hold the menu button until the menu comes up. You can see that we're displaying quick heat and preset temp. Toggle to the preset temp by pressing the down arrow. Now you can see that the arrow is pointing at the preset temperature. Press Enter to enter that programming section. And now the display reads spatula 1, preset temperature number 1. Yes, we want to preset that, so again, we quickly press the Enter button. Now the window is reading spatula number 1, preset temperature number 1, and it shows a default setting of 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd like my spatula number 1 to be at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to press the up arrow, and you'll see the temperature indication scroll up to my temperature. I'm going to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And back down one. Now I have the 350 in the programming window, and I want to select that. And that's done very simply by pressing and releasing the Enter button. Now you can see that we're back to our main window. We've changed our spatula number 1 temperature to 350, and our spatula number 2 is still at our factory default. There are 4 preset temperatures available for each spatula. Now that we've set the spatula temperature for 350 degrees, it's substantially higher than the factory preset of 97 degrees. The Ultra Waxer 2 has a unique feature called Quick Heat. Quick Heat applies maximum power to the selected spatula for 10 seconds, causing a rapid heat rise. Let me show you how to access the Quick Heat function. You can see that the indicating arrow is pointing at spatula number 1. This is the spatula that I want to apply the Quick Heat function to. Press and hold the menu button until the display changes. And you can see now that our arrow is pointing at quick heat, and in order to apply it, just simply press and release the enter button. You'll see now that the display is flashing. This indicates that maximum power is being sent to number 1 spatula for rapid heating. Be sure to check your instruction manual for a more detailed description of programming your ultra waxer too. And check regularly on the Kerr website for any equipment updates.